Hi, everyone. It's Kylie K here with Rachel,
Hi,
one
ahoy.
of my favorites, in Kylie's Corner. And, Rachel and I were just talking about how I am not Yana, don't pretend to be, and I have no idea what I'm doing on any given day. And here we go, right? We're just going to roll with this. So I'm popping my Rachel cherry today. And you know why I wanted to have Rachel on a one on one? So, to give you a little bit of a backstory. So, I think most spiritual practitioners completely choke and die when it comes to the business side. And the beautiful thing about Rachel is that she was in the business really before she blossomed fully into this. Like you've always been spiritual, but really blossomed into the spiritual space. So when I feel stuck on a business front, guess who I'm calling, right? And there is something about Rachel that triggers such, and I say trigger can be a negative thing, but it really like instigates this really beautiful birthing process for me every time I talk to you, Rachel, because these light bulb moments go off like, oh, I didn't think of it like that. Because I'm hyper fixated on, I just want to help everyone. But I also need to pay some bills occasionally, just occasionally. I do have a sugar daddy who's my husband, and I'm really blessed. Infinite love and gratitude.
Infinite
But
love and gratitude.
I know. But at the end of the day, I do, like every spiritual practitioner, we have this desire to make a name for ourselves and do all these things that we don't like to talk about because it feels dirty, right? So I wanted to throw it over to you, and I want you to kind of I you've spoken about this before on the Your Soul Wisdom podcast, but I want to kind of hear about what made you leave your safe career of being a chef, doing all the things that you should be doing as a young adult in order to like dive into this unknown entrepreneurship to actually have it succeed wildly. But what was the like what made you leave your everyday job
Well,
to do this?
I really, realized that I haven't told you any of my background
No,
because
I wait, are
I
you a chef? Were you a chef? Like, what did you
I
do?
I look, I was a lot of things, and I had my own catering company, I had my own cake business, all this kind of stuff, but I really have been self-employed since I was 22, and
Wow.
I'm turning 55 this year, this kind of thing, so I never left a job. If you know what I mean. They
Right.
even when I was, chefing in establishments, I was still contracting to them in that kind of way. So I've always run myself as a business pretty much through my adulthood, and that choice didn't come to me. It was when I was working as a personal chef for a private family, and for their accounting or tax reasons, they wanted me to they didn't want to employ me. In fact, now I as an employer, I understand other reasons. And so that's what was forced upon me to set myself up to be self-employed. But again, that was, of course, a gift. So, by the time I started my last business, which I had for 20 years, which was obviously the most significant one, I was really familiar with business, as in all the terms of business, like running yourself as a business and a big business has still have a lot of similarities, and it's still all the same terminology and stuff like that. So I was all very familiar with that by the time I started. But the reason why I started Food Nation is, and again, excuse me, I didn't do this in a contrived way, but again, I can see how beautiful it was and how it worked out is that I wanted to be Food Nation to be a place that I wanted to work in. So I wanted it to be the kind of culture that I found completely comfortable and nourishing and supportive and all of that kind of thing. And little did I know that that's was a perfect sort of ingredients for building a really successful business. That if you look after your staff and you nourish them, then it's sort of like with gardening, it's like looking after the soil and watering it. Do you know what I mean? It's almost all of it. And then the plants just do their thing, just like the staff just do their thing. So yeah, that's what kicked it off.
I love that. And I think I've worked for a lot of entrepreneurs in my life, and a lot of them have come from that mindset of I wanted to create my own work environment.
Mm.
Um, so I totally relate to that because I don't think I could work for someone anymore now after being an entrepreneur. I don't think I can. I could even entertain going back and working in corporate jobs or whatnot. But
Mm.
I digress. My next question is that I was thinking about is, so you've gone the whole gamut, right? You've started the beginning, you've retired out of this career with success in my eyes, right? Where you're able to
Mhm.
fill a lifestyle without needing to work is my gauge for success. But I want to hear, at what point did you go, I'm successful?
Oh. Oh, I tell you
What
what,
was your gauge?
I can remember when I turned 40, that I definitely was aware that never was I one of those kids that dreamt of who I was gonna be when I grew up or saw myself as an adult or anything like that, but I could certainly see when I was 40 that I had eclipsed any ambition that I had as a kid. I had sort of achieved that, but that also opened up something else of, like, I also still had the rest of my life to live. So, maybe that was the beginning of a different level of investigation into me, but as a personal project kind of thing from
Right.
that point onwards.
That
So, and you know what? Thank you for asking me that because I really haven't thought about that. And yeah, even I find that quite moving now. But yeah, certainly it was around 40.
Yeah, I think it's something that we
Oh, and
w
just by the way, at 40, I was massively in debt and incredibly financially stressed and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, I just
no,
made that.
this was when you bought
Uh,
the house,
but
right?
Well, I bought the house when I was 39,
Mhm.
and anyway, but that was, I don't know, maybe that's when I was confident that everything was going to turn out if I just kept on swimming like I was swimming kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So sorry, I just wanted to clear that up. It wasn't
No,
like I could have tapped out of the business at 40 and just
right.
lived my life. It wasn't like that, but I had set myself up better than I imagined I ever could have.
That's, yeah, it's amazing because we keep moving these posts, right, as to what
Mhm.
defines our success and at what point do we stop or do we call ourselves successful, right? But I love the story about the house. And to kind of preface everyone, you were basically in this business that you had grown from the, foundation up. And you were like, I'm going to be a baller and I'm going to go buy a house. And this house
Well,
may
again, I don't know what I've told you about this house, but you tell me your version.
Okay, well, this is
I
what
feel like
I
I have
believe.
deceived you in
This
some
is
ways.
my
Okay.
version of the house. From my understanding, you wanted to buy this grand, house that may not have been the ideal budget at that time,
Yeah.
and you were like, "I am going to work my ass off to fund this house." Instead of waiting, like, do you look back and go, "Maybe I should have" did was that house a motivator to bring in more money? Because like, is it the cart before the horse before the cart, right? Like, most
Right.
people will, like, be like, "Okay, well, I've got X amount of dollars in the bank. I'm gonna go and I can pay the mortgage. I'm gonna go buy the house." But from my understanding, you were like, "Fuck yeah, let's go buy this house. Oh, shit,
Look,
now I've got to motivate like, not motivate, but I gotta strive to pay the mortgage." And I'm curious to see
look.
what your motivator was.
Again, that's a sort of sort of a very different. Like, I understand how the story can seem like that, but my version of the story today
Mhm,
would be, you know, uh, my partner and I owned a property in Sydney, so I was already a homeowner, that kind of thing.
mhm.
And we had rented in Adelaide by that stage for 7 years. And we had a very large deposit for what I thought was a very, that would have bought a very nice house at that time. And then the house that we ended up buying came up. Anyway, the point of it is that it was almost 70% more than what my actual budget was.
Mhm,
And I really am not financially conservative, but financially responsible for sure.
mhm,
And I begged, borrowed, and stole. I'm not joking. Like, I can remember in that first month after we bought the house, I actually borrowed $40,000 off one of my sales reps who had it in their bank account for a renovation. It's not like they had that money, so that I could pay my bills on time that month. That's how stripped out of every single bit of cash I was. Oh, and just the flip side of it is, if my customers paid me on time, I would have had all the money to pay everything. So just to say that again, the flow and effects of other people's poor values really do affect everybody else's lives. But anyway, and yeah, I don't know what to say about that, because really that was quite a lesson for me, because then what actually happened is I had this extraordinarily exquisite house, m- so much more than anything I could ever imagine. But I was really overwhelmed with debt. When I say we had no money, I mean, like, it was really stressful, and that I had a big business at that stage and it was making a lot of money, but it was the first time that I really learnt what cash flow was and actually
Mhm.
planned it out month by month. I had never had to do that before. And it also, unfortunately, for a period of time, turned my whole professional life into just grinding down debt. And that was possibly one of the most miserable times of my life. So it was an interesting dynamic. Like, this house has been a huge learning curve when I think about it. And again, the way that I could see myself out of that is I had to develop other professional goals. So, I'd mentioned that I had sort of achieved my basic professional financial goals, or knew that I was on that track, that it was going to kind of work out at 40, then under extreme pressure. So, yeah, I had to pivot. And again, I think that just drove me more into personal investigation, personal development, that kind of thing. But the moral of the story is, from having that much pressure, I had paid the house off in 8 years. So
Right.
that's the
Which
thing. So, yes,
yeah.
working really hard. And then that coincided with COVID. And when all Australians were locked inside their own homes for 2 years, I was pretty pleased at, the investment that I'd made and the choices that
Right.
I'd made. And I thanked Rach 10 years ago quite a lot at that stage.
I
So,
love it.
yeah. But yeah, it's interesting for me to this is just another example for me of, even though you and I are really connected and we spend a lot of time communicating with each other, just everybody hears things so differently and hears words so differently and hears the tone so differently. And what you have interpreted isn't inaccurate, but it doesn't feel like my experience. It feels like
Right.
one facet of a diamond, but that facet, although it's part of the diamond, doesn't look like the diamond, kind of feeling.
Right.
But
And I think
this is
yeah.
just another example.
And that's really interesting because at the end of the day, like I acknowledge that's probably not the whole story, but it is how I perceive it. And
Yeah.
my whole point of bringing it up was like there are people out there who I've seen all gamuts, right? I've seen the whole and I seem to be like that seems to be my word of the day. I've seen the whole spectrum of people who like I'm in awe of people who throw money at personal development because it's an
Mm.
investment in their future self. I
Mm.
acknowledge that process. Do I do that? Absolutely not. That scares the shit out of me, right? But you literally backed yourself by like, okay, I'm gonna purchase a house that's 70% above my budget, but that's just going to motivate me to work harder. And I know that there's more to the story and there's little facets, but essentially that's what I'm hearing and I'm gonna stick with that. Right. And then
The
there's the
only part that I'm sticking at is I don't know if I could have actually worked harder at that stage. So,
but you
it didn't
back
motivate me
you
to work
knew.
harder, but it
Right.
motivated me to ca be very focused on the
Continue.
business. Yeah.
Right. And did it scare you at any point to be like, okay, now I get to deliver, continuously deliver, there is no slacking off if I'm having a bad day? Like like,
Oh, look, there was so much more pressure in the business than my personal finance. Do you know what I mean?
okay.
Like, besides the fact that I had 8 staff or whatever,
Mhm.
um, there were especially local brands that I represented that I would have been minimum 50, maybe 100% of their income as well.
Right.
So, yeah, no, there's
Yeah.
all types of pressure. I didn't own my warehouse at that stage, so I had massive rent, I had big leases. There's a lot of investment in cool rooms, in racking that you have to get the value back out of.
Right.
So, um, yeah, business business is such a weird, like, I've never come it do nothing provides as many paradoxes as business.
Right.
And, that is both what I find the most interesting of life and also the most sort of, I don't know, for want of better words, infuriating or something like that, you know. Um, but it seems like it gives you freedom, and in some ways it does. But in the ways that it doesn't give you freedom, it locks you into a prison cell this big.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's such an odd, it's such an, everything is always opposites at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh,
I get
I'm thinking,
it's
gosh, Carly, I normally
no,
can express myself better, and I'm
no,
thinking
no,
I'm
look,
good at talking about business,
I
but I don't normally talk about it like this.
no, no, I completely understand, and I think
Mm.
what and, like, I acknowledge your journey, um, it was I know that we've spoken about it, and it's extremely inspiring because at the end of
Oh,
the day,
soothing.
we as a like a practitioner and then running a whole company with staff, and I know there's practitioners that have staff and whatnot, but there is there's a very different expectation when you're running your own unit versus a company, right? And so I wanted to also touch on briefly if you if you wanted to go now, granted, you in on paper, you have succeeded in your professional career. You have reached the end of your goalpost, which was I'm able to now live a life of my choosing, right?
Yep.
And I have the backing to do that. If you were to go into a spiritual practitioner role, what would you take away from being a business owner with staff, a warehouse, mega responsibility with a lot of different vendors and everything else that goes with it? Your one man show. What would you take away from that in order to
Do you
marinate
mean
in that?
do you mean as the structure of the business, or do you mean me as a practitioner?
Any any Anything that you would do that you how can I explain it? Because 'Cause I'm also struggling with my words
Okay, well,
today.
put it this way, I can answer both questions. I feel like
Okay,
ChatGTP, you're gonna get 2 responses to choose from.
okay, love
So
that.
for the structure of the business, which, like, this will not be good news, but this is authentic rage. I've looked and helped and assisted with doing lots of business, models for practitioners. It's a very difficult thing to make into a successful business and not burn yourself out. That's the
Yep.
reality of it. And when it boils down to it, when I look at other professionals, let's call them psychologists, who can and do charge, let's call it twice as much, money
Mhm.
for the time. When I actually look at their lifestyles, like, they're definitely not buying boats, if you know what I mean. Like, they're living a
Mhm.
life. So it's very difficult for me to look to see how a basic structured practitioner model would work just for
I see.
somebody to live a life well, that kind of thing. So I think, yeah, so there's that.
Mhm.
Um, if I think about what I would bring as a practitioner if I was talking to somebody, um, I don't know. As I said, I just think more than I haven't had any children, so I suspect that business and children, I would be stiff competition for personal growth. But I think business is so public that that's the significant difference in the learnings between family, which is generally, for good or for bad, a more private experience. Businesses are all public.
Mhm.
And so for someone like me who's a very private person, I also, well, look, I was about to say I struggled with that, and I absolutely did. I can remember at the beginning, and I was 33 when I started the business, and I've always been fairly precocious. So it's not like I was a beginner. But I did register at some stage my own resentment that I felt like I was on a stage, and that everybody, the customers, the staff, my suppliers, everybody was in the audience. And what they were looking for was any hint of hypocrisy from me. Do you know what I mean? That's what the
Interesting.
feels were. I know. And to start off with, I really resented that. Do you know what I mean? Because I felt, look, that's not fair. Like, I give you guys, all the whatever, and you hold me on such a tight leash kind of thing. But then in the end, I'm really grateful because, of course, that was them holding me to my highest account and my highest values. And slowly, not that I'm blowing smoke up my own ass, but I could see that I evolved into naturally being that person that didn't actually need those constraints because
Right.
I was going to do it now I know. And look, maybe I was never going to do anything untoward. I just didn't like people seeing all of my behavior all of the time, but that's what it's like.
That's interesting. Okay. So I know that we're approaching our 20 minutes, but I want to throw out one question if I
Go ahead.
can. In all honesty, do you think a spiritual practitioner could ever meet that level of success?
Look, I really do. But again, even when I wasn't an unwealthy person, so to speak, when I started Food Nation.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like I was already a financially organized, structured person that had got herself organized. Um, but it really did take 20 years for me to run a freaking food distribution business. Do you know what I mean? Like literally hundreds of millions of dollars worth of product being
Right.
sold for me to grind it out to get to this stage. And I think similar analogy. If a practitioner was starting their career reasonably financially stable
Mhm.
and have a reasonable financial structure, then yes, over 20 years, I definitely believe it's entirely possible that their business would develop into something that could support their retirement or have produced to support their retirement. But I
Right.
would be extremely surprised if it was only one on one.
Right.
So
And I
by the end of 20
yes.
years, if it was one-on-one, I would expect that if they were a very good practitioner, those sessions would be very expensive.
Right.
So again, it's like I know people think that 5 years is a long time. I'm thinking 5 years. I had only
Right.
just moved into my last sort of like into my warehouse and like I can remember it filled up a tenth of it.
Right.
That kind of thing at 5 years. It was the beginning of the beginning. It was 5 years is like literally like starting school. Like, if you
Right.
think about it like that, in fact, that's how what I used to say. I was like, when it got to 18 to 19 years, I'm like, "You've got to understand that I have been at school, I have gone to university, I have done my postgraduate degree, and I am still here," that kind of thing.
Right.
But, yeah, maybe if you think about your business as in literally a human age thing, that might help you to see where you are on it, that kind of thing. And also lower your expectations. There's so much bullshit about people make think, this overnight success thing. And like we've talked about it, none of these people are overnight successes. They
No.
were successful or doing something to start off with, and then they've been doing whatever they've been doing for 12, 15 years for us to even know them. So
That
anyway.
that's the key word, the know them part. Because 'cause I've spoken to
Mm.
a lot of, people from, that mentor-student perspective, and they're like, "I wanna be a healer." And I'm like, "But you know that this is something," and a lot of people don't think about it. They think that the universe will provide for them if they're in alignment, right? And I understand that concept, but it's a bit of bullshit when it comes to business because there is that reality of you can't just go in and expect clients. You have to have people know you, connect with you, build up your base. Then you get to go in and then start doing, getting clients. You're not going to, you might have a client a month, and that is not enough. You have to be prepared to have something else funding this this dream for 5 years.
Look,
I've
and
been in, like, it's
When I
years, it's
started my business,
decades.
I also had a contract with the South Australian Government as a consultant. So
Mhm.
even me with at that stage, I would have had 15 years of experience in the industry and all the contacts and everything. I still had to do an overlay to support myself through that time, even though
Right,
I was completely set up, even though I knew exactly what I was gonna do and how to do it. And
right.
yeah, that was I don't know, 6 to 8 months,
Right,
that kind of
and
thing.
it is
So
time like, that's a
but that was
long time.
basically just to be clear, that's me
Yeah.
working full time, 6 to 8
Mhm.
months, and doing a business on the side.
Right,
Just so
right, and people burn out, like, it's funny 'cause there's in LA, there's this area called Topanga Canyon, and Topanga Canyon is, like, no, it's, like, m backs into the mountain of Malibu, and, like, everyone, has their tea, coffee shop, and their little retreat center, and they have yoga and whatnot. And 90% of those, I was talking to someone that lives there, and 90% of those people that do that, that have those businesses, are all funded from generational wealth.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they don't have to work, but they believe that this is what their sole purpose is, right? So if you're not in that category, you do get to think about, if I'm going to go into this space, there is a
Mm,
reality shock of you're going to be working this for years, maybe even a decade
mm,
before, and you have to support yourself during that time. And it's not going to be all spiritual. You're going to have to go and live your 3D experience and go do something that you might not want to do. But
mm.
there is definitely that groundwork you get to lay down. And I think that people in this industry believe that the universe is going to magically provide if they show up, and it gives me the shits.
Well, and again, and I am honestly financially responsible when I say this,
Mhm.
but what I have realized that pretty much every business takes 6 to 7 years to become cash flow positive, and to be clear, that means for those 6 years, I was doing cash advances on my credit card every month to get enough money to pay my bills and then paying it back off 4 days
Of
later,
course.
this kind of thing.
Right.
And that apartment that I had in Sydney, when I ended up selling it 20 years later, I had refinanced it so many times that I actually owed the same amount as what I borrowed on it 20 years before. Of course, it was worth a lot more.
Right.
But like, we're talking continually backing yourself in going into more debt and working harder to pay off that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it
Yeah.
was, yeah,
That's
it was
such a
like swimming,
fascinating
swimming
concept.
without breathing is the only way I can
I just
explain what it feels like.
yeah, I am just very, very
Everybody, anyone wants to talk business with me and
yeah.
see if I recommend it for them, contact Rachel.
I love it. Makes me incredibly itchy to think about that, and makes me even
Mm.
more proud of being a sugar, mum, having a sugar daddy. On that note, okay, I am not pretty with wrapping these up, Rachel, and you're gonna learn now how I wrap up these
Okay.
little Kylie corners.
Well, we're gonna
Um,
we're we're gonna we're gonna be doing part 2 because this was absolutely not what part 1 was supposed to be about
no,
when we were talking about a couple of sample questions. Let me tell you, this was
no,
not it. So
I I
we'll
don't
do
have
what
a
we were
script.
supposed to do the next time.
Right, and you know me, right? I pull things out of my ass cheeks. I don't have a script.
I
So
know. I think we just say, "See you soon, lovers,"
see you
and
soon,
pop it.
and like and subscribe and comment, because Yana will appreciate it, and so
Yeah,
will
and
we.
thank you. Infinite love and gratitude.
Right. Stay tuned.